watching Daybreak live on A News, and I'm here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the key headlines. Trump says US will guide trapped ships out of the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran says it's a violation to the ceasefire. 3 passengers have died after suspected hantavirus outbreak on a Dutch cruise ship. And European leaders and Canada's Prime Minister arrive in Armenia for the first EU-Yerevan summit. First, this morning, the US is launching a naval escort mission in the Strait of Hormuz as tensions with Iran continue to disrupt a key global shipping waterway. A reported tanker strike and competing blockade measures highlight the risk of further escalation. Iran says any US interference in the strait will be considered a violation of the ceasefire. Here's more.
US President Donald Trump says the Washington will guide stranded vessels out of the Strait of Hormuz starting Monday. Posting on his Truth Social account, he described the effort, called Project Freedom, as a humanitarian move to help ships safely leave restricted waterways and resume normal trade. Trump did not name the countries involved, but warned that any interference would be dealt with forcefully. He also said US officials are holding very positive talks with Iran that could lead to broader progress, though he gave no details on coordination. Regarding Hormuz, top Iranian lawmaker warned that any US interference in the strait would violate a ceasefire. State-linked media said Tehran has received a US reply to its latest peace proposal, delivered through Pakistan, and is reviewing it. Iranian reports said the proposal calls for US forces to withdraw from near Iran's borders, an end to naval blockades on Iranian ports, and a halt to all hostilities, including Israel's offensive in Lebanon. The US has not formally confirmed its response, though Trump reportedly called the proposal unacceptable. Shortly after Trump's announcement, a tanker reported being hit by unknown projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Agency said the incident occurred about 78 sea miles north of the United Arab Emirates, with all crew reported safe. It is the second attack in the strait within 24 hours. The US plan comes as hundreds of ships and up to 20,000 seafarers remain stuck in the strait due to the ongoing conflict. US Central Command says it will support the mission with 15,000 personnel, more than 100 aircraft, warships, and drones. Iran has restricted most shipping in the Gulf for over 2 months, pushing energy prices higher, while some vessels have reported being fired upon and others seized.
Now let's take a look at the stories shaping the day across the globe, and we stick with the first story of what's going on in Iran. And Project Freedom is what it's being called. US to begin escorting ships out of the Strait of Hormuz today from Monday is what the information is telling us. So as you just heard on that particular report, the US has decided that this is what they want to do and are looking to figure out whether or not an agreement with Iran is sustainable. However, Iran says it has received a US response to its latest, hasn't received a response to its latest peace proposal. The response was delivered by Pakistan, which was now being reviewed, according to local news agency. Now, the US is yet to formally confirm if they have replied to Tehran's 14 points, but President Donald Trump reportedly told Israel's Can News on Sunday that the proposal was unacceptable to him. Iranian state media said Tehran's 14-point peace plan asked Washington to withdraw its forces from near Iran's borders, end its naval blockade of Iranian ports, and all hostilities to stop, including Israel's offensive in Lebanon. Now, it's called for an agreement between the two countries to be reached within 30 days, and Iranian state media added that the proposal urged the two sides to focus on ending the war rather than extending the current ceasefire, which is in place indefinitely. Now, on the bigger question here is the nuclear weapons, and Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said at this stage we do not have nuclear negotiations, which is something that the US government has really been pushing Iran on in regards to what's going on in the war. Trump doesn't want Iran to have any form of a nuclear program or nuclear weapons, is what he's actually requested. And on Sunday, Trump announced, which is the latest news, that the US would help countries with ships stranded in the Strait of Hormuz. But it's something that Iran is pushing back on, saying that that is a violation of the agreement that has led to the ceasefire. So we'll definitely keep you updated with this, with all parties concerned. But it'll be quite interesting exactly how the US decides to manage this and navigate ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. As we just reported, there were strikes on a vessel. We don't know where those strikes have come from, but later on I'm sure we'll be able to provide you with a further update. But it looks like a very precarious situation at the moment, which means that they're still at a standstill in relation to negotiations and a peace deal coming out of this war, which has gone over for just over 2 months now. Okay, now let's turn to the next story making headlines this morning, and that's on the BBC website, and that's in relation to a cruise ship which has unfortunately led 3 people to have died because of a virus. Now, a suspected outbreak of the rare hantavirus infected on a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean, as you can see from this particular picture, and we'll get video of it quite soon, has killed 3 people. That's according to the World Health Organization, and South Africa's health department said this on Sunday. Now, the WHO said that an investigation was underway, but that at least one case had a hantavirus and had been confirmed. And we'll provide you with more information. But 2 of those who died were husband and wife, aged 70 and 69, and both were from the Netherlands. Now, the hantavirus is usually caught through contact with urine or feces from infected rodents, which is how it's said to have been contracted, but we're not actually quite sure. As you can see from this picture, it's just the cruise ship on the Atlantic, and they were traveling from South Africa to Cape Verde at that time. Now, while the virus is rare, infections could be spread between people, which is what the WHO has said, and there was no specific treatment or cure, but early medical attention could increase the chance of survival. We do have more on this story later on in the programme, so please stay tuned, as I'll be able to provide you with a little bit more detail as to how this virus got there and what the procedures are now in regards to the other passengers on this cruise ship in the Atlantic at the moment. Okay, now let's go to our next headline, and that's on the Guardian website, and that's in relation to what's happening just next door in Armenia. Canada to be the first non-European nation at the EPC summit as Carney seeks allies. Now, that's the headline leading on the Guardian, but what will be happening later today is that more than 30 European leaders, including Canada's Prime Minister, will be part of a European political committee summit in Armenia. Now, it's something that has been long awaited and long due that Armenia is definitely taking part of. Now, the country is considered Russia's closest ally in the South Caucasus, so it's quite interesting that how things are playing out. Now, Tuesday will be the first ever bilateral EU-Armenia summit attended by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa, and is taking place in the capital city of Yerevan. Now, Armenia is heavily dependent on Russia for its energy resources. It buys Russian gas at a preferential rate, which Vladimir Putin, which is Russia's leader, made a point of spelling out when Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan, the Armenian Prime Minister, visited Moscow in April. And Russia sells gas to Armenia for $177 per 1,000 cubic meters, and noted that while it actually costs Europe $600, so there's quite a large difference in that, and it's something that the Russian president wanted to highlight just because of Armenia's growing ties with the EU. Now, in March 2025, Armenia's Parliament passed a law to launch the process of joining the EU, which is something that we know that Russia isn't too pleased with, which is also why there is part of the ongoing war in Ukraine is Russia's attempts to stop certain countries being part of the EU. So we'll definitely keep you abreast of all the information that takes place. But we do know that 30 European leaders, as well as British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is also attending this 2-day summit, and will provide you with more information as to how that goes and what comes out of it. Armenia is definitely trying to set itself up as being more attractive and to the EU and being a part of the bloc. So we'll definitely find out more information and exactly how Russia responds to that in a positive or negative way is still yet to be seen. Okay, now let's turn to the fourth story making headlines this morning, and that's staying in Europe. And we go to Deutsche Welle website, and that's MERS not giving up on Germany's relationship with the US. Now, German Chancellor, which you can see here, Friedrich Merz, has addressed the state of a bilateral relationship with the US on Sunday in the wake of public disagreement between him and US President Donald Trump over the war in Iran. Now, the German Chancellor said there was no correlation between disagreements over the Iran war and the pullout of US troops from Germany that was done towards the end of last week. He actually insisted that he shared Trump's goal of ensuring Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon. And in this interview with German broadcaster ARD, Merz downplayed tensions between the two countries. He said that Trump's announcement to pull 5,000 US troops from bases in Germany wasn't surprising. And on the transatlantic relationship, he actually made a comment saying, "I'm not giving up on working on the transatlantic relationship," adding, "Nor am I giving up with working with Donald Trump." Now, just to give you more context and to bring you up to date with this particular disagreement between the two leaders, between Chancellor and US President Donald Trump, is that Trump scolded Merz for saying that Tehran was humiliating Washington at the negotiating table. Now, Trump's comments about Merz were followed by the announcement of the troop reductions in Germany, and then on the same day he announced an increase in tariffs on cars and trucks from the EU, a move that would hit Germany's economy the hardest. So it's unlikely that these two things are not connected just because of the mere quickness of this from when Friedrich Merz said what he said to when Trump heard and responded with this particular thing of pulling out German troops and increasing tariffs. We'll have more information on this story later on in the programme, but those are your key headlines for the morning. So that was a press roundup. I'm now going to take a quick break, but when I return, I'll discuss the rest of the global stories. Don't go anywhere.
Figuras armenias en Argentina. Lo hizo por plata y es para los gobiernos. Un tipo muy piola.
No, money from Armenia, from Russia. Group of Russian Armenians.
People who are financial days.
Some rich Armenians, they live in Russia.
Pashinyan lo puso preso.
Pashinyan is not protecting their own color. The Armenian came in Russia.
No con Pashinyan mismo, pero
que remuevan a Pashinyan.
And welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha
Mustafa. This is One on One.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenging.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to Fierce. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak. Now let's have a look at the global stories this morning, and we turn first to Europe. And 3 people have died following a suspected hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship in the Atlantic, according to the World Health Organization. 6 passengers have been affected, with 1 confirmed hantavirus case and another in intensive care in South Africa. The World Health Organization says it is coordinating evacuations and assessing risk for those still on board. The outbreak was reported on the MV Hondius, which has been traveling between Argentina and Cape Verde. Dutch authorities confirmed 2 of the victims who died were nationals. Hantavirus is a rare virus and usually spreads through contact with infected rodents. Now to France, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, leader of the hard-left La France Insoumise party, has confirmed he will run in France's 2027 presidential election. He announced it on Sunday in an interview with TF1, setting out his candidacy less than a year before the vote's second round. Mélenchon, who previously ran in 2012, 2017 and 2022, aims to unite the left with an established team and manifesto. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has sought to ease concerns over relations with Washington after US President Donald Trump reduced the number of US troops in Germany and introduced new increase on tariffs, raising questions about transatlantic ties. Merz spoke in a television interview stressing the importance of cooperation within the alliance.
I have to accept that the American president holds a different view on these issues than we do. But that does not alter the fact that I remain convinced that the Americans are important partners for us, the most important ones in the North Atlantic Alliance, and that we have a shared interest in Europe and America working together to end this conflict, and then, for example, to end the conflict, the war in Ukraine, to provide joint security guarantees for Ukraine. We have already achieved a great deal together in this regard.
Staying on this subject and the announcement that the US has withdrawn thousands of troops from Germany, residents in the country say it could have negative impacts on the community. Here's what they had to say.
Residents in Germany have expressed concern after the Pentagon announced it would withdraw 5,000 troops from the NATO ally on Friday. In the western German town of Landstuhl, near the US airbase in Ramstein, residents say the withdrawal could negatively impact the local community.
In any case, it would hit hard because this area is very dependent on it financially, and I think it would cause a great deal of damage.
Americans weren't just part of society. Some of them really did live among us quite normally. Not all of them were isolated, but they provided jobs. They rented houses and flats. I know from my family that this has also enabled many people to pay off their mortgages.
I think that's bad for the region. After all, many Americans spend a lot of money here. I think that would be bad.
Ramstein is the largest US airbase in Europe, where troops have been stationed since 1952. In southern Germany, US Army Garrison Bavaria, headquartered in Grafenwöhr, is a major training hub for forces in Europe. According to data from the Defence Manpower Data Centre, more than 36,000 active service members were stationed in Germany, divided across 5 garrisons as of December last year.
Turning to Ukraine, and Ukraine says it has struck Russian energy targets, including 2 Shadow Fleet tankers near the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. The attacks are part of an escalating drone campaign, with both sides launching hundreds of drones at each other on a near-daily basis. In Russia's northwest, officials say dozens of Ukrainian drones targeted the major oil export hub of Primorsk, sparking a fire that was later contained. Authorities say no oil spill was reported and more than 60 drones were intercepted. Kyiv has intensified strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure in recent months, aiming to disrupt fuel supplies and weaken the war effort. Staying on the war in Ukraine, Britain is moving closer to the European Union on defence support for Kyiv as UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer prepares to attend a European Political Community Summit in Yerevan. The package is worth £78 billion and is aimed at covering Ukraine's needs over the next 2 years. Most of the money is expected to go toward military spending. London says the move could also help British defence firms supplying Ukraine. The UK Prime Minister is also set to announce new sanctions on Russian companies linked to military supply chains. Staying on, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that his government may consider banning some pro-Palestinian marches following the stabbing of 2 Jewish men in London last week. Starmer said peaceful protests must be protected, but chants such as "Globalise the Intifada," which is a slogan used in pro-Palestinian protests calling for international widespread resistance against Israeli occupation. UK government said that this slogan was completely off limits and should be prosecuted. Britain has raised its terrorism threat level to severe, with police warning of elevated threats to Jewish and Israeli individuals and institutions in the UK. Turning to the Middle East, and the death toll in Gaza has risen to 72,610 since the war began between Hamas and Israel beginning on October the 7th, 2023. That's according to Gaza's health authorities. Alongside this, more than 172,000 people have been reported injured. Officials say that since a ceasefire took effect on October 10th last year, at least 830 Palestinians have been killed and 2,000 others wounded. Many victims are still believed to be trapped under rubble, with recovery efforts still ongoing. Now, a search operation is underway in Morocco after 2 US service members went missing during a multinational military exercise. US Africa Command says the service members were taking part in African Lion 2026 near the Cape Dra training area close to the city of Tantan and reported missing on Saturday. US, Moroccan and partner forces have launched coordinated search and rescue efforts. AfricaCom says the incident is under investigation and the search is continuing. Over to East Asia, and Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi received a ceremonial welcome in Australia's Parliament House, where she met with Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese. The talks focus on energy, defence and critical minerals. Both leaders agreed to work more closely, strengthen ties with the US and boost security as Indo-Pacific tensions and the Strait of Hormuz closure affect the region. Both leaders described the talks as highly productive and said their partnership will continue to grow stronger in the years ahead. Now to Africa, and life is slowly returning to Sudan's capital, Khartoum, after nearly 2 years of intense fighting. But the wider conflict continues to take a heavy toll across the country. Here's more.
Sudan's army says it has reasserted control over its capital, Khartoum, bringing a degree of stability to a city that saw some of the heaviest fighting in the war. Streets that were once battlegrounds are now seeing residents return, although destruction remains widespread. The conflict began in April 2023 between forces led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the paramilitary rapid support forces under Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. Since then, tens of thousands have been killed and around 13 million people displaced, creating one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Fighting has not stopped across the country. In Darfur, RSF forces took control of El Fasher, where the United Nations says thousands of people were killed in a matter of days. While the army now holds most regions, the RSF continues to control much of the West. With ceasefire efforts failing, analysts warn the conflict could become further entrenched, despite signs of recovery in the capital.
Stretching over to East Africa, and Ethiopian coffee exports are gaining momentum in China after a new zero tariff policy opens the door for stronger trade ties. Let's take a look at this report.
Ethiopian coffee exports are expanding in China following the introduction of a zero tariff policy on imports from African countries.
I came here because this Huchan company is a key buyer of green beans from Ethiopia. I also come here for displaying Ethiopian traditional culture, information sharing. I'm the delegate of coffee trading company in Ethiopia. I hope more and more Chinese can drink the original Ethiopian coffee.
The move is expected to deepen trade ties and increase market access for producers, with Ethiopia among the world's leading coffee exporters and China one of its fastest growing markets. In central China, companies are expanding processing and retail operations, aiming to bring a wider range of African coffee products to consumers.
Yes.
A newly opened store in Zhengzhou is showcasing more than a dozen varieties, reflecting growing demand and investment in the sector. Officials say the trend reflects broader growth in China-Africa trade, supported by policy incentives and expanding cooperation.
Since China expanded cooperation through unilateral openness, more African agricultural products have entered the Chinese market. This is partly due to the zero-tariff policy and partly due to cooperation between government departments and enterprises.
Trade between China and Africa has reached record levels, with agricultural exports, including coffee, playing an increasingly significant role.
Over to a quick break now. When I return, I'll take a look at the regional headlines making the news this morning. Don't go anywhere.
Figura Armenia que Argentina. Y empieza por plata y es para los gobiernos. Un tipo muy piola.
No, money from Armenia from Russia. Group of Russian Armenians. People who are financial days, some rich Armenians, they live in Russia.
Pashinyan lo puso.
Pashinyan is not protecting Neoncrola.
The Armenian game is Russia.
No con Pashinyan mismo, pero.
Que remuevan a Pashinyan.
and welcome to Prime Time. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the Strait of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back and thank you for joining me this morning. Now let's turn to the key stories across the region. And we head first over to Armenia, and Yerevan is hosting the 8th European Political Community Summit, better known as EPC, marking a significant moment for Armenia's foreign policy direction. Here's more on that story.
Armenia is hosting a major international summit that could redefine its place on the global stage as dozens of European and regional leaders gather in the capital, Yerevan. The meetings come at a time when Armenia is signaling a shift toward Europe, despite long-standing ties with Russia. Nearly 50 heads of state and government are attending the European Political Community Summit, alongside a first-ever European Union-Armenia meeting. Senior EU figures, including European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa, are expected to take part in key talks on Tuesday. At the centre of discussions is Armenia's decision to begin the process of joining the European Union. French President Emmanuel Macron is among the leaders in Yerevan, holding talks with officials and civil society groups. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also been meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, focusing on defence cooperation and continued support for Ukraine. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is attending as a guest, marking a broader international presence at the summit. Despite closer ties with Europe, Armenia remains heavily linked to Russia as a member of the Eurasian Economic Union led by President Vladimir Putin, reliant on Russian gas and host to a Russian military base. Moscow has warned Armenia cannot align with both blocs. The European Union has responded by boosting support, including a new mission to counter disinformation and protect the upcoming vote.
The summit takes place amid reports of possible protests in Yerevan, linked to calls for the return of Armenian prisoners from Karabakh. It also comes just weeks before parliamentary elections, scheduled for June 7th.
And just to add to that report, in relation to the summit that's taking place over the next 2 days in Yerevan, Canada is the first non-European country to attend and to participate in the talks. And as the report actually highlighted, it's also for them to kind of move away and steer away from its closest ally, which is the US, trying to diversify its allies and also its trade negotiations with other countries. Now, as we will find out later on today and into tomorrow exactly what these talks will highlight, we know that they will be talking about Iran and the war there and everything that's impacting the Middle East, as well as what's going on in Ukraine with Russia and the continued conflict between the two countries. Now, what we do know is that over 27 EU leaders will be coming, which also includes British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and now Mark Carney from Canada's Prime Minister as well, to come together and to discuss some talks. What this actually highlights is Armenia's change in relationship towards Russia, its previous Soviet Union past, in order to look more reflective of EU values and norms. And it's something that that journalists and analysts are saying that Nicole Pashinyan is trying to lean more further into and hopefully be a part of the wider bloc, as they've already made a request for this in March of last year. So we'll definitely keep you abreast of everything taking place and how important this will be for Nicole Pashinyan, as we know that elections are coming up in June for Armenia, and exactly who will be coming out on top, whether or not it stays with the current president or whether or not they decide to go further afield and select one of his opponents. But that is what's taking place. I'll definitely keep you updated throughout the course of the day here on A News. Now let's go to some other news also taking place in the region, and it's now returning back home to Azerbaijan, and it's the first direct flight from Belgrade to Baku operated by Air Serbia has landed at the Haidar Aliyev International Airport here, marking the launch of a new air route between the two capitals. Our A News reporter Chimnaz Shalar reports.
First direct flight from Belgrade to Baku, operated by Air Serbia, has landed at Haidar Aliyev International Airport, marking the launch of new air route between the two capitals. An official welcome ceremony was held at the airport to mark the occasion. Under the new flight schedule, services will operate twice a week on Wednesdays and Saturdays, strengthening air links between Azerbaijan and Europe. The visa-free regime between the two countries is also expected to increase demand for this destination. Passengers of the flight were welcomed with traditional Vota salute and received Azerbaijani souvenirs.
Okay, the flight was excellent. It was very good service and uneventful, which is always nice.
This is the first flight from Belgrade to Baku. We are here to compete in some competition for culinary, and this flight was so comfortable and not so short, but it was all right. And I think that this flight means a lot for Serbia and Azerbaijan, and like to connect people and to make some things easier and some jobs, you know. So for us, it was good. It was really good flight.
I am the chef from Serbia. We are coming here to the Baku, Azerbaijan for the competition Golden Shah in Baku to compete. The flight was very nice here. It's the first flight for the Air Serbia to go from Belgrade to Baku, and it was really nice flight, yeah.
The ceremony was attended by representatives of Azerbaijani government, a Serbian delegation, and executives of Air Serbia. Officials say the new route marks another key step in expanding the international networks of Baku's main airport, reinforcing its role as a regional aviation hub. The new connection is expected to boost tourism ties between Azerbaijan and Serbia, making travel between the two countries faster and more accessible. I'm Chimnaz Shahlar with Avaz Hajiev for A News.
And just to add there, that particular flight is roughly 3.5 hours, so a lot closer than many people might have thought. And as they mentioned in that report, it's a very comfortable ride, which will open opportunities maybe for work and for other business opportunities within the region. Okay, now let's move over to Georgia, and the business climate in Georgia has declined in the first quarter of 2026, according to the Business Association of Georgia. The survey conducted in March found that business expectations for the next 6 months fell by 4.2 points, while assessments of current conditions dropped by 1.1. The downturn affected almost every sector. The sharpest decline was seen in construction, followed by services and trade, while the industrial sector reported improved current conditions. Baku's old city has been transformed into a vibrant carpet gallery, blending tradition with creativity. The third edition of the International Carpet Festival drew global attention, celebrating the rich diversity of tapestry culture. Our reporter Nadia Gyane has more.
An F1 car on a carpet? Well, if you think this international festival is just another carpet exhibition, think again. There's much more here than you might imagine. So join me on 2-day fairy tale-like color-filled festival in the heart of Baku. If you look closer, you might even see some flying carpets here. The International Carpet Festival brought a sense of magic to the ancient walls of Baku Old City and energized the streets with thousands of visitors over the weekend. Locals and tourists seized the moment to enjoy centuries-old culture combined with medieval architecture. The streets turned into an aisle of carpets, and it almost felt like walking inside a big, cozy home. Here one could see almost anything covered with a carpet, from the most up-to-date technology like a Formula 1 car to a farm tractor.
Этот фестиваль очень красивый. Я здесь впервые.
This festival is very beautiful. It's my first time at this event. I'd also like to say that there are various carpets here that are truly impressive. They each have their own history. There is also a Formula 1 car on display, which really surprised me.
First of all, the ladies making carpets. I'm impressed of the carpets which are made in silk. The touch is very, very nice. And also it's a very big variation of the models.
The main idea behind the festival setup was also to draw people of all ages and interests. Stretching across a large area, from the castle walls to the Maiden Tower, many different activities were presented to visitors. The festival also showcased different carpet weaving schools, as well as a diversity of materials and symbols. Farmers, craftspeople and handmade exhibitions also took place as part of the festival, many using carpets as the main theme.
It's a kind of a mixed palette of culture, architecture, you know, taste, food, whatever. So it's very nice to see this in this setup. I mean, so many rugs all around, laying around, and you can walk on it. So yeah, that's very interesting.
I also participated in the festival last year, but this year the number of countries represented in the pavilion is greater. For example, I found it interesting that Nepal and Mexico are participating this year. It turns out they also have rich carpet traditions. This festival is a great opportunity to showcase the geographical diversity of carpet culture.
Thus, the third International Carpet Festival concluded in the Azerbaijani capital Baku, attracting strong international interest. Baku remains the only city in the world to host an annual event dedicated to carpets.
Looks so colourful and so historic in the old city. It reminds me very much of Disney's Aladdin, if you remember the whole market scene, full of tapestry and carpets all around. But anyway, looks great. Now let's move over to our next story. And Samarkand is hosting the 59th annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank, bringing together thousands of global leaders to discuss sustainable growth, connectivity and economic cooperation across the region. Our correspondent has more.
The 59th annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank is underway in Samarkand, gathering more than 4,000 delegates from over 100 countries, including government officials, financial institutions and private sector leaders. Held under the theme Crossroads of Progress, the forum focuses on green transformation, energy transition, digitalization, investment, food security and resilient supply chains. A key announcement at the meeting is a $70 billion initiative unveiled by ADB to boost regional connectivity through energy systems and digital infrastructure. The program aims to integrate cross-border power grids and expand digital network across Central Asia and the Pacific by 2035.
Today, I'm proud to share major announcements. ADB is bringing Asia and Pacific together to build the energy grids and digital highways that will power the region's future. To achieve this, we able to mobilize $70 billion by 2035. $70 billion. This includes $50 billion, $50 billion for the Pan-Asia Power Grid, and $20 billion for the Asia-Pacific Digital Highway.
Alongside this, a separate digital investment program worth $20 billion will expand broadband access, reduce connectivity costs by around 40%, and bring reliable internet to hundreds of millions more people, particularly in remote and landlocked areas. Uzbekistan has been a member of the Asian Development Bank since 1995 and remains one of its largest partners, with a total project portfolio approaching $16 billion. The country is hosting the bank's annual meeting for the second time, highlighting its growing role in regional and economic cooperation as well as connectivity.
Now, tourism across Central Asia is gaining momentum, with millions of visitors choosing the region as a new travel destination. But behind this growth, competition is intensifying. Our A News correspondent Fariza Kalimazana reports from Kazakhstan.
Competition for tourists is intensifying across Central Asia as visitor numbers continue to rise and countries compete more actively for global attention. According to research by a Commonwealth partnership, travel to the region has grown significantly, but the distribution of tourists is beginning to shift. Kazakhstan remains the most visited destination, however, its neighbors are expanding at a much faster pace. In the first half of 2025, Kazakhstan received 7.5 million visitors, up 8.7% year-on-year. By comparison, Uzbekistan saw tourism surge by nearly 48%, while Tajikistan recorded growth of more than 30%. This means Kazakhstan still leads in volume, but the regional balance is gradually changing. Within the country, tourist flows remain predictable. The capital Astana relies largely on business travel and major events. Almaty, meanwhile, attracts a broader mix of visitors. The profile of visitors is also evolving. Most tourists still arrive from CIS countries, but there has been a sharp increase in arrivals from China. After one of the world's longest pandemic lockdowns, the number of Chinese tourists has grown roughly fivefold. Interest from India, Turkey and Europe is also steadily increasing. At the same time, countries in the region are setting long-term goals. Tajikistan, for example, aims to become a leader in ecotourism by 2030, focusing on its natural resources and strategic location. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Now to a very quick break. When I return, I'll have more of the key stories this morning. Don't go anywhere.
venir acá a la Argentina. Y empieza por plata y es para los gobiernos. Un tipo muy piola. No, money from Armenia, from Russia. Group of Russian Armenians. People who are financial days, some rich Armenians, they live in Russia. Pashinyan lo puso preso. Pashinyan is not protecting their own product. The Armenian game is Russia. No con Pashinyan mismo, pero...
Que remuevan a Pashinyan.
Welcome back, you're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Gyane. Now let's head over to East Asia. And in China, policing is getting a high-tech upgrade, with new tools changing how officers interact with the public and respond to emergencies. This new innovation is drawing attention and helping its wider police force. Here's more.
Police in Guangzhou have introduced a range of smart technologies to enhance safety and public engagement during the May Day holiday period. Among the most eye-catching additions are humanoid robots, now accompanying officers on patrol in busy public areas. Dressed in police-style vests, the robots interact with the public and deliver anti-fraud messages, drawing attention and encouraging people to stay and listen.
With the robot on patrol, people are more likely to stop and engage with us, making them more receptive to anti-fraud advice.
Authorities say the approach is helping improve awareness and reduce vulnerability to scams. On the ground, officers are also using self-balancing scooters to move quickly through areas where vehicles are restricted, such as parks.
These scooters allow us to respond quickly. We carry emergency supplies so we can assist people on site if they are injured.
Drones are also being deployed to monitor crowds and traffic from above, providing real-time support to officers on the ground. Together, the technologies form a multi-layered policing system aimed at improving response times and strengthening public safety.
I don't know, if they were to have them here, how would I respond to that? I think you just want to chat, maybe. You won't see them as a police, but maybe as a friend. Maybe that was the whole idea around having robotic police officers. I don't know. But anyway, time for another quick break. When I return, I'll have a full update on the latest headlines, plus a look at what's making the front pages this morning. Stay with me.
And welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. Two hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
The
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabon. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv, Washington, London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Hello, you're watching Daybreak live on A News, and if you're just joining me, I'm your host Nadia Gyane, here to take you through the day's top stories. So let's take a look at the headlines. Trump says US will guide trapped ships out of the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran says it's a violation to the ceasefire. 3 passengers have died after suspected hantavirus outbreak on a Dutch cruise ship. And European leaders and Canada's Prime Minister arrive in Armenia for the first EU-Yerevan summit. Now let's take a look at the stories making the front pages this morning. And we head first over to the Guardian website, and European leaders converge on Armenia as Russia looks on. So this is the EPC meeting happening later today, where more than 30 European leaders, including Canada's Prime Minister, will take part in a European political community summit in Armenia. Now, the country has long considered Russia to be its closest ally in the South Caucasus, but that is slowly changing, and we're seeing that firsthand with this particular summit. Now, Tuesday will be the first ever bilateral EU-Armenia summit, attended by European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in red there that you can see on screen, and European Council President Antonio Costa, which is on the other side, the guy in the red tie. Now, it's taking place in Armenia's capital of Yerevan, and Armenia is heavily dependent on Russia for its energy resources and had a meeting with Russia's President Vladimir Putin earlier last month in relation to that. And Putin actually reminded Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan that he gets a reduced rate when it comes to gas. Armenia currently gets $177.50 per 1,000 cubic meters, and noted that Europe actually gets $600, and the difference there is quite large. So it's quite interesting how this particular relationship will play out in real terms. Now, we know in March of last year, Armenia's parliament passed a law to launch the process of joining the EU. So this particular meeting summit that is taking place later on today is showing Armenia's push to be more part of the EU and its European allies further afield, to make sure that they are part of that particular bloc and moving away from its Soviet Union ties. Now, Russia hasn't actually commented on this particular summit or their thoughts, but once we get that, we'll definitely let you know. Whether or not it will turn in Armenia's favour is yet to be realised, but we do know that in the meeting they will be talking about Ukraine and the war going on there, as well as what's happening between the US and Iran war that is also within this region, amongst a number of other issues. But it's quite interesting how everything will fold in together, and the key player, the key kind of leader or lead that Armenia is taking in relation to this summit that is in their capital for the next 2 days. Okay, now let's move to the next story on the Deutsche Welle's website, and that's in regards to what Chancellor Friedrich Merz has said. So the headline here is Merz not giving up on Germany's relationship with the US. Why has that come out? Well, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, which you can see here in wearing his black glasses, addressed the state of the bilateral relationship with the US on Sunday in an interview in the wake of public disagreement between him and US President Donald Trump over the war in Iran. Now, Friedrich Merz said there was no connection between the disagreements over the Iran war and the recent pullout of US troops from Germany, which took place towards the end of last week. Now, Friedrich Merz insisted that he shared Trump's goal of ensuring Iran never obtains a nuclear weapon, and during an interview with German broadcaster ARD, Merz downplayed tensions between the two countries and said that Trump's announcement to pull 5,000 US troops from bases in Germany was not surprising, and that on the transatlantic relationship that they have, he was not giving up on working with US President Donald Trump or the transatlantic relationship in general. He said, adding, nor am I going to give up with working with Donald Trump. Now, just to put this into context, US President Donald Trump actually scolded Merz for saying that Tehran was humiliating Washington at the negotiating table. Now, Trump's comments about Merz were followed by the announcement of Trump reducing the number of troops in Germany. And on the same day, he also announced an increase in tariffs on cars and trucks from the EU. Now, that's a move that would actually directly hit Germany's economy the hardest. So it feels very much related to what German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said, what Trump said, and then a follow-up to that by actually reducing the number of troops in Germany and increasing tariffs on this particular industry. We'll keep you updated as to how things continue to go, but it definitely looks like that this was the cause and effect of all things. But Friedrich Merz is saying that the two are very separate, and he wasn't surprised by the reduction of US troops in Germany. Okay, now let's move to our next story making headlines, and this is going to be everywhere this morning, and this is on a news website. This is Project Freedom, which the US has said to begin escorting ships out of the Strait of Hormuz. That's starting from this week. Now, President Donald Trump has announced that this is something he wants to do. Iran says it received a US response to its latest peace proposal. The response was delivered by Pakistan, who is helping to negotiate the two plans between the two countries. It was being reviewed. That's what the latest said on that. However, the US is yet to formally confirm whether or not they've received or responded to Tehran. But President Donald Trump reportedly told Israel's Can News on Sunday that the proposal was unacceptable to him. Now, Iranian state media says that Tehran's 14-point peace plan includes Washington withdrawing its forces from near Tehran's borders, ending its naval blockade of Iranian ports, and end all hostilities within its region, including Israel's offensive in Lebanon. Now, it also called for an agreement between the two countries to be reached within 30 days, and Iran state media added that the proposal urged the two sides to focus on ending the war rather than extending the current ceasefire. Now, the bigger question on all of this is actually when it comes to their nuclear weapons, which is what Trump had the major issue with, and Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson said at that particular stage they do not have clear, or they do not have nuclear negotiations in regards to that. That's something still on the table and TBC at this moment in time. But in between this time and then, on Sunday, Trump did announce that he would be escorting trapped ships in the Strait of Hormuz to leave and to continue on its journey. But that is something that Iran is not particularly too keen on, and they say that this actually goes against the ceasefire agreement that they made with Trump over 2 weeks ago. But for more information, let's go to our report for more details.
US President Donald Trump says the Washington will guide stranded vessels out of the Strait of Hormuz starting Monday. Posting on his Truth Social account, he described the effort, called Project Freedom, as a humanitarian move to help ships safely leave restricted waterways and resume normal trade. Trump did not name the countries involved, but warned that any interference would be dealt with forcefully. He also said US officials are holding very positive talks with Iran that could lead to broader progress, though he gave no details on coordination. Regarding Hormuz, top Iranian lawmaker warned that any US interference in the strait would violate a ceasefire. State-linked media said Tehran has received a US reply to its latest peace proposal, delivered through Pakistan, and is reviewing it. Iranian reports said the proposal calls for US forces to withdraw from near Iran's borders, an end to naval blockades on Iranian ports, and a halt to all hostilities, including Israel's offensive in Lebanon. The US has not formally confirmed its response, though Trump reportedly called the proposal unacceptable. Shortly after Trump's announcement, a tanker reported being hit by unknown projectiles in the Strait of Hormuz. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Agency said the incident occurred about 78 sea miles north of the United Arab Emirates, with all crew reported safe. It is the second attack in the strait within 24 hours. The US plan comes as hundreds of ships and up to 20,000 seafarers remain stuck in the strait due to the ongoing conflict. US Central Command says it will support the mission with 15,000 personnel, more than 100 aircraft, warships, and drones. Iran has restricted most shipping in the Gulf for over 2 months, pushing energy prices higher, while some vessels have reported being fired upon and others seized.
Sticking with our top story, and here to discuss the implications and the ongoing peace negotiations is Dr. Hamza Iftikhar, Assistant Professor of Political Science at Lahore University of Management Sciences. Good morning and welcome to the programme.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, as you just heard in our first report, and we know that this is going to be making key headlines throughout the day, Trump has said on Sunday that this is something he wants to do in relation to bringing stranded ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and has said, he's told actually Israel News Media that the peace proposal that he was given via Pakistan about what Iran wants was unacceptable to him. So where does that leave things right now?
It leaves the talk in a fragile, but I would say not a hopeless state. Trump's comments have been kind of both ways. At first, like you mentioned, he publicly said that the proposal is unacceptable. But we saw last night, I believe, he posted on Truth Social where he left the door open by saying that Iran's discussions with Iran have been positive. And so that could lead us to believe that, he also said that it could lead to something positive for all. This suggests that while the U.S. is rejecting the 14-point proposal in its current form, it doesn't seem to be rejecting the prospects of negotiating and the process of getting a deal itself. So it seems like the disagreement appears to be over sequencing. Iran wants the war to end, the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz to end, and these crises to address first, whereas the U.S. wants some stronger commitments on the nuclear and the regional security front. So it seems like the Trump's mixed tone may be deliberate. Well, on one side, it keeps the pressure on Iran, while also making sure that it doesn't give the impression that the diplomacy has collapsed. So the positive language which we have seen last night come through seems to suggest that while the talks may be at a stalemate, but they're definitely not dead. And it seems like Trump and the U.S. have replied back to this 14-point proposal. I believe just now we heard that the Pakistani foreign minister was in a phone conversation with the Iranian foreign minister. So it's currently going on as we speak, the conversations on what to do and what the next steps should be.
Yes, and the world is looking very closely in relation to that. Now, Trump has said that he wants to guide stranded ships through the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran says that's actually a violation of its ceasefire between the two countries. How could that stall further negotiations, and what kind of impact will that have on oil prices?
That's a very interesting state of affairs right now. I believe the announcement and Trump has deemed this as a humanitarian project, just to get the ships that are stuck out there. And it's primarily driven by the economic costs of this conflict. It's been affecting the world, and we are seeing reports and hearing reports that it's not just going to affect right now, but it's going to have an effect throughout the summer for months to come, especially when it comes to fertilizers and the prices of oil and gas. So I believe the first course of action is definitely just to get the Strait of Hormuz open, and in order to get the prices a little bit lower, a statement that, there's going to be a passage of ships is definitely going to help do that. So I think that both sides are obviously, they want the strait to be the center of attention. I think both sides agree that that's the first thing they need to address. So that will likely be the first step. If, the U.S. is trying to get to a point where the first step is Iran allowing the safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. In return, the U.S. may offer a pause or a gradual lift of the port's blockade. The second step can be focusing on, let's say, the commercial shipping, not to target them, ensuring their safe passage and so on and so forth, just to get the markets relaxed a little bit. The third step is then, talking about the second sequence, or the third sequence is essentially the nuclear talks and what to do with them, and possibly through the mediators and so on and so forth, as well as the regional actors and so on and so forth. So it seems like they're on that road, but we have yet to kind of see. Obviously, the immediate response of the Iranians are not to meddle with whatever is going on in the Strait of Hormuz, that they won't allow such a thing. But we have to keep in mind that the negotiation is going on and the back channels, not in the limelight. So the initial responses that we might hear may not exactly represent what the higher ups are feeling about the situation.
It seems very multi-layered from your response, quite multi-layered, quite complicated in everything coming together in agreement with what Iran wants, what the US wants, as well as adding that extra layer of what's going on in Lebanon with Israel and Hezbollah. Now, how might that also add to things? Because Iran has also requested that Israel stops, its ongoing attacks in Lebanon against Hezbollah, and there is a ceasefire in place, which is not making much of a difference. Some analysts may say. So how does that also add to the current negotiations between the US and Iran? Or is the US seeing that as something very separate and dealing it as a separate entity completely?
I think Lebanon is definitely part of the discussions. The ceasefire there hasn't been fully worked out, primarily because it lacks strong enforcement on the ground. Because you also have, the Lebanese government on one side and Hezbollah on the other side. There's some guarantees that both parties in that conflict want. Israeli wants their guarantees on their end. Hezbollah wants guarantees on their end as well. And it seems like both of them are also waiting for what happens with the Iran-US talks. If the talks improve, Hezbollah may have more incentive to reduce the attacks or stop the conflict overall, as well as Iran. If the talks collapse, obviously the Hezbollah may keep the conflict as a pressure point against the US and Israel. So the ceasefire only to an extent matters if it becomes an enforceable security arrangement, not just a diplomatic statement.
I see. And in regards to this particular war, we know it's been now 2 months, come up to 2 months, or has been just over 2 months. Now, what is the US strategy in all of this? The ceasefire is in place indefinitely now because of what Trump has said. They want to continue diplomacy and conversations between Iran. But what is the US strategy? We've seen that the blockade of Iranian ports has helped somewhat in the US favor in relation to this war. However, Iran has been very resilient, much more than I think maybe the US would have figured or gathered at that particular time. So what is the overall strategy for the US, do you think?
Absolutely. And you have to keep in mind that the US had about 60 days to go at this without any congressional approval. And they recently decided not to get the approval and deem the war terminated just because in order to get the further extension for 30 days, which a lot of people were thinking that the US might do that, they had to still justify the need to be in that war for 30 more days. And given the economic pressure and also the public opinion pressure that Trump has to also deal with, because we have to remember foreign policy leaders are also domestic politicians to an extent, right? So what the U.S. strategy right now seems to be is of coercive diplomacy, I would say. This means using military pressure, naval power, sanctions, blockades to push Iran towards the concession. I believe the U.S. is likely would want to avoid a large ground-scale war, but allow enough pressure to force a deal. What their aims are to make sure that A, the Strait of Hormuz opens as soon as possible, and B, the nuclear program gets curtailed. I think these are the two objectives that they feel like they can achieve without getting a full-scale war. So they're just trying to make sure that the pressure is there so they can retain their leverage, which they have for a while now.
Wow. Well, we'll definitely be paying closer attention to how talks continue to go and exactly what the US and Iran decides when it comes to a peace plan for the two of them. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Iftikhar, for your time on the program and for your insights. It's been invaluable. Thank you. Now, turning over to Europe, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has sought to ease concerns over relations with Washington after US President Donald Trump reduced the number of US troops in Germany and introduced new increase on trade tariffs, raising questions about transatlantic ties. Merz spoke on a television interview, stressing the importance of cooperation within the alliance.
I have to accept that the American president holds a different view on these issues than we do. But that does not alter the fact that I remain convinced that the Americans are important partners for us, the most important ones in the North Atlantic Alliance, and that we have a shared interest in Europe and America working together to end this conflict, and then, for example, to end the conflict, the war in Ukraine, to provide joint security guarantees for Ukraine. We have already achieved a great deal together in this regard.
Now to France, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon, leader of the hard-left La France Insoumise party, has confirmed he will run in France's 2027 presidential election. He announced it on Sunday in an interview with TF1, setting out his candidacy less than a year before the vote's second round. Mélenchon, who previously ran in 2012, 2017 and 2022, aims to unite the left with an established team and manifesto. Ukraine says it has struck Russian energy targets, including 2 Shadow Fleet tankers near the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. The attacks are part of an escalating drone campaign, with both sides launching hundreds of drones at each other on a near daily basis. In Russia's northwest, officials say dozens of Ukrainian drones targeted the major oil export hub of Primorsk, sparking a fire that was later contained. Authorities say no oil spill was reported and more than 60 drones were intercepted. Kyiv has intensified strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure in recent months, aiming to disrupt fuel supplies and weaken the war effort. 3 people have died following a suspected hantavirus outbreak on a cruise ship in the Atlantic, according to the World Health Organization. 6 passengers have been affected, with 1 confirmed hantavirus case and another in intensive care in South Africa. The World Health Organization says it is coordinating evacuations and assessing risks for those still on board. The outbreak was reported on the MV Hondius, which was traveling between Argentina and Cape Verde. Dutch authorities confirmed 2 of the victims who died were nationals. Hantavirus is a rare disease and usually spreads through contact with infected rodents. Amsterdam has become the world's first capital city to ban public advertisements for meat and fossil fuel products. The measure took effect on the 1st of May and covers billboards, tram shelters and metro stations. Adverts for burgers, petrol cars, airlines and fossil-heavy travel are being removed across the Dutch capital. City officials say the ban supports Amsterdam's climate goals, including becoming carbon neutral by 2050 and cutting meat consumption. Meat and travel industry groups criticise the move, calling it an unfair limit on consumer choice and commercial freedom. Now over to East Asia, and public concern is growing in Japan over possible changes to its post-war pacifist constitution and military policy. That debate has brought tens of thousands onto the streets of Tokyo to voice opposition to constitutional revision.
Tens of thousands of people gathered in a Tokyo park on Sunday to mark Japan's Constitution Memorial Day. They called on the government to protect the country's pacifist constitution and oppose military expansion. Many also expressed concern about growing defense spending and a stronger military role for Japan.
If they revise the constitution, it will only intensify international tensions, especially with neighboring countries, and increase the risk of war. That's why I firmly oppose it.
This is exactly what Japanese militarists did during the imperial era. They are setting the country on a path to war. We will never tolerate what is happening.
I myself did not live through that era, but I believe we are repeating the history we learned about, and that makes me very angry. At the same time, I feel deeply sorry that such mistakes in history are being repeated.
The demonstration came after reports that Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi reaffirmed her intention to pursue constitutional revision. According to local media, possible changes could include Article 9, which renounces war and limits Japan's ability to maintain armed forces with war potential. Japan's post-war constitution took effect in 1947. Article 9 is widely seen as the foundation of its pacifist stance. Sunday also marked 80 years since the opening of the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, known as the Tokyo Trials. That tribunal prosecuted Japanese wartime leaders after World War II. Many residents at the rally said any constitutional change could weaken Japan's long-standing commitment to peace.
Now we'll fly over to the US, and an anti-war activist remains on top of the Frederick Douglass building in Washington for the 3rd day in a row. The unidentified individual climbed the structure in Washington, D.C. on the 1st of May to oppose the war in Iran and the use of artificial intelligence. Police have restricted traffic on the bridge and are negotiating with the protester, describing it as a barricade situation. A small group of supporters gathered below, calling for an end to the conflict and backing the demonstration. Now to Venezuela, and Venezuelan migrants staged a protest in Santiago calling for the release of political prisoners in the country. Demonstrators gathered in the city centre, some chaining themselves and waving national flags to highlight alleged repression by authorities in Caracas. The rally formed part of a wider global campaign led by opposition figure Maria Corina Machado, with protests held in more than 120 cities worldwide. According to Amnesty International, at least 485 people remain arbitrarily detained for political reasons despite a recent amnesty law. Yerevan is hosting the 8th European Political Community Summit, marking a significant moment for Armenia's foreign policy direction. Let's take a look at this.
Armenia is hosting a major international summit that could redefine its place on the global stage as dozens of European and regional leaders gather in the capital, Yerevan. The meetings come at a time when Armenia is signalling a shift toward Europe, despite long-standing ties with Russia. Nearly 50 heads of state and government are attending the European Political Community Summit, alongside a first-ever European Union-Armenia meeting. Senior EU figures, including European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Council President Antonio Costa, are expected to take part in key talks on Tuesday. At the centre of discussions is Armenia's decision to begin the process of joining the European Union. French President Emmanuel Macron is among the leaders in Yerevan, holding talks with officials and civil society groups. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also been meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, focusing on defence cooperation and continued support for Ukraine. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is attending as a guest, marking a broader international presence at the summit. Despite closer ties with Europe, Armenia remains heavily linked to Russia as a member of the Eurasian Economic Union led by President Vladimir Putin, reliant on Russian gas and host to a Russian military base. Moscow has warned Armenia cannot align with both blocs. The European Union has responded by boosting support, including a new mission to counter disinformation and protect the upcoming vote. The summit takes place amid reports of possible protests in Yerevan, linked to calls for the return of Armenian prisoners from Karabakh. It also comes just weeks before parliamentary elections, scheduled for June 7th.
Now to the region, and Naval Politica has released a third set of alleged footage involving former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo. It claims he discussed an artificial intelligence project linked to Armenia and Karabakh region of Azerbaijan. The material suggests the project moved from academic research to broader use in media, politics and international networks. The footage is unverified and A News has not independently confirmed its authenticity or the claims made in it.
And the next step for me is see how can organize this in a platform to use artificial intelligence to do this properly. So I'm working with the South Paulo University, the physics department on the project on artificial intelligence. Now I spend days in Spain with some friends of mine who are involved in this type of companies. We're debating how the Armenia project is a pilot of a company using artificial intelligence.
Si vamos a hablar de esto, es esta cosa que no quiero asustarte, pero yo hago muchas cosas. También soy profesor en la Universidad de San Pablo, en Brasil. Trabajo con un físico, con el departamento de física. Estamos usando la física moderna, que es básicamente la inteligencia artificial, para modelizarlo y tratar de organizar el orden global y el desorden global. Y entonces tenemos base que financia eso, tenemos supercomputadoras trabajando en eso. Y tenemos el foco al principio queríamos hacer orden global en general. Después dijimos, no, es muy complicado, hagamos genocidio. Y después dijimos, hagamos una Nagorno Karabaj, que yo tengo mucha información. Estamos sacando una Nagorno Karabaj. Ahora, yo veo que este producto académico es un producto académico. Yo tengo que sacar el jugo de yo. Estoy intentando armar una compañía que va a ser cross-border, que transforme la información que produzcamos acá que llega a los políticos que toman decisiones, que llega a los decision makers, que eso es una técnica precisa, que llegue a los mainstream media, social media, para que sea masivo, deben que llegue a otros académicos para que solidifique.
Pero tú estás desarrollando un programa utilizando inteligencia artificial.
Sí.
Porque hay programas, hay think tanks que se juntan para aconsejar a la gente que toma decisiones y no existe hace mucho tiempo.
Sí.
Pero
You're watching Daybreak now for a quick break, and after that we'll look at our technological news. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak with me, Nadia Gyane. Now turning to the world of technology, and an American aviation firm has completed testing of an air taxi in New York. The company hopes to cut hour-long waits in traffic to just a few minutes. Here's A News journalist Nathan Kamanga with the story and more on our tech show, Switch.
Do you remember the talk about flying cars existing in the future? What if that future is already here? Now, I know, this doesn't really look like a flying car, but it's an air taxi developed by Joby Aviation. They've just wrapped up a week-long test in New York, and that's a step closer to winning government approval to deploy commercially. The company says it aims to connect Lower Manhattan and Midtown to JFK Airport in under 10 minutes. That trip could take more than an hour in New York congestion. So I guess the excuse of being stuck in traffic won't save you anymore. Now, who needs flying taxis when you've got 2 rockets strapped to the back of your car? Literally. This is the Nebula Next 01 Jet Edition, unveiled in San Francisco by a Chinese company called Dreamy. Now, weird car name aside, the company claims its 2 rockets can fire up in 150 milliseconds, sending you racing to 100 kilometers per hour in only 0.9 seconds. So, would you like to purchase one? Well, Dreamy says it's not yet available on sale. Probably for the best, parallel parking that thing would require a launch permit, and most of us can't even handle a speed bump, let alone a rocket boost. This is art. And this is also art. It features robotic dogs wearing faces of tech billionaires and is part of an exhibition in Berlin by a US artist called Beeple. But there's a deeper meaning behind the artwork. You see, Beeple argues that artists like Picasso once shaped how we saw the world, but today that influence has shifted to tech billionaires controlling algorithms. So he placed silicon heads on top of robodogs that capture images of their surroundings and then produce prints in the style of the person whose face they bear. I just wonder why he didn't use humanoid robots though. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to catch up with us for more tech news and insights on the next show.
Those walking dog heads look very scary. I don't think I'd like that. If anything, I probably would kick it by accident just because of how freakishly likable, like their faces are exactly like they're like the person. But very strange, but very innovative to a certain extent. But anyway, that's your news update for the morning. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow to give you another update of all the news stories making its way over the course of the day. But make sure you stay tuned to A News as we'll provide you with further updates throughout the day. So don't go anywhere. Take care.